yard line. I don't know.
What was the down and distance? Dude, Brandon Staley's a buffoon, bro.
I think it was like 4th and 2. But they've
It's not
struggled to
that
run the
bad.
entire game. They did not run at all. Justin Herbert
Yeah.
led the team in rushing with 12 yards off of one scramble.
Who's
If you
this?
know you can't run the ball and you're trying to get those 2 yards, you better off throwing it at that point, right? If you're
I
gonna
just
go
realized.
for it.
So Alex Monahan at OddsJam set me up. You know somebody that's starting some betting website and they wanted to talk to me about it. I set up a meeting at 4 o'clock today, forgetting I have a doctor's appointment at 4:30. That's super awkward. I set it up like last week too, so I was like, I very well knew in advance. Okay, I'm gonna have to put my computer on serve. Let's get this link in the Discord. All right, let's post in the Discord. We can get going. Let me tilt this away. All right, ready?
Yep.
What is up, everybody? After a long week 3, I'm Dr. Profit. You guys know me as Will. We got JJ, also known as Jay Sleeper Stats. We're going to go over all the week 3 games individually, and we're going to clip it up for you guys so you can see each individual game in smaller clips if you prefer that as well. But we hope you guys enjoy the video. Let the intro roll through. All right. So we said last week, after pretty much every game went over and a bunch of favorites won, that whether it be this week or next week, the books would be back to get us soon. And that absolutely happened this week. We got the Ravens upset, we got the Cowboys upset, and one other big upset I can't even remember off the top of my head.
Houston.
Houston upset the Jags, exactly. So parlays broken, overs in piss. It was just not good for anybody that decided to gamble, not good for anybody's fantasy football. So many big weeks on people's benches. It was ridiculous. But we're going to go through each game one by one. We're going to start with the Ravens and the Colts. Now, the Ravens lost this game 22-19 in overtime. They had countless chances to win it, and they didn't. Now, I don't think anybody expected them to lose to a Gardner Minshew and Zach Moss led offense. But when you look at the stats, you'd be shocked to see that I don't think the Ravens should have lost this game. Like, I was looking through all the stats and I was surprised at how it all came together. For starters, I think the biggest thing that led to the loss is the fact that the Ravens were 46.7% third and out percentage. That's super high, especially when you compare that to the Colts' 18.8%. So even though the Ravens had way more opportunities to score just off some better drives that weren't 3 and out, the Colts dominated the control of the game a little bit more just because they were able to extend more drives. The other big thing that I think the Ravens should have led to the Ravens win is they had 45% pressure percentage compared to the Colts 27%. If you get over 40% pressure percentage, you should be expecting to dominate that game. That
Yep.
anything above like 40% is really good. 45% against what is supposed to be a bad offense. It's not like they're facing Mahomes. You expect to win that game. And then to top it all off, the Ravens had 1 penalty, the Colts had 6. So really the biggest thing I could come out of it was the Ravens need more creativity on their routes. I don't know if it's more on the receivers not getting enough separation or the play callers drawing up way too many shallow routes, but it was pretty much all just a bunch of 5-yard comeback routes. It was never there was no crossers to get guys running in stride. It was really just screens and 5-yard comeback routes. So Zay Flowers had like what felt like 15 receptions for 10 yards. What kept happening was he'd catch it, turn, and then there's either the DB marking him and then the sideline or the DB marking him and a linebacker. And it was just he'd catch it, turn, and then just dive to get an extra 2 yards because there was nothing else he could do. Really, the only guy who was able to find soft spots past 5 yards was Nelson Aguilar, who I think a lot of people forgot he even signed for the Ravens coming into the season. So if
I
that's your
sure did
number,
last week.
yeah, exactly. So if that's your main threat, then that's a problem. Mark Andrews had on their touchdown drive. I think it was their touchdown drive. I know they got far down the field. He found the soft spot down the field like 3 or 4 times on the same drive, but then outside of that was pretty much absent the whole game. So Lamar was 22 of 31, led the team in rushing. Like he didn't break the game open, but it's not on him by any means. I just think it's when you have such a lack of creativity on your routes and you don't have a true running back there right now, it's kind of hard to get anything going because then it's like, all right, you're depending on basically Lamar to break the game open. Otherwise, everybody's just doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
That was really all I found from that game. Baltimore ran a lot of cover 3. Indiana ran a lot of cover 1. Nothing crazy there. The only other thing that's worth noting is I'm pretty sure Zach Moss is top 5 in the league in most broken tackles, and he's really only played 2 of the 3 weeks, so that's pretty impressive. And his usage is insane. He's seeing like 80% of snaps at least. So I know it was 98% week 1. I know he took almost all of them week 2 as well, or week 3. I don't know the exact number, but Indiana and Baltimore, it's very much just the Baltimore wins that game 9 times out of 10. That's really all I took out of it, and it's one of those fluky losses. They happen throughout the season. I'm not too. There's some of the other upsets they very much did concern me. This one didn't. This is just if it happens more than once, then I'll start being concerned. But in my eyes, it's a one-off upset kind of thing right now. Next game.
Yep.
All right. Lions and Falcons. This was another game I looked pretty deeply into because I was shocked that Atlanta didn't get a single touchdown. And the reason that shocked me so much is because as a Lions fan, I was expecting Bijan and Algier to cause a lot of problems for us. And then Desmond Ridder would take advantage of that with a play action for 15 passes or 15 yards here and there. But 2.2 yards per carry by Atlanta. Outside of that, though, it was really just the fact that they couldn't get their running game going because once that happens, they're relying on Desmond Ridder, who I think we can all agree is not the option you want carrying the game. And I think
Definitely.
it showed because both teams ran very similar pass schemes and both defenses got the exact same pressure percentage to the quarterback. So there was no reason for them not to score a touchdown when the Lions seemed to be getting down the field what felt like every drive.
And they missed a wide open touchdown for Kyle Pitts.
And that was not even considering the fact that Pitts had a fairly good game. Like,
Yeah.
he didn't do anything crazy, but like outside of the minimal first down movements that the Falcons had, a lot of it was through Kyle Pitts.
But you know why, right? It's because he got that mustache now.
That's all we've been missing, isn't it? Dude, I just want him to be good, but I need him to have a quarterback. Somebody messaged me in a dynasty league, and they said we were talking about a trade in the preseason where I wanted Jameson Williams plus something else for Kyle Pitts, and he messaged me. He was like, man, I'm so glad I didn't do that Pitts trade. I was like, dude, I'm not expecting him to be good with Desmond Ridder. I'm waiting for next year.
Yeah.
So it's a shame because they have so many weapons. Dude, Drake London, Bijan, Algier. Kyle Pitts. Their offensive line is not half bad. They just need a tight end. It's ridiculous. Or not a tight end, a quarterback. And it's absolutely baffling they haven't figured that out yet. Outside of that, we talked before about how Amon-Ra St. Brown is terrible versus too high coverage, and that's what uh, the Falcons run a lot of. Well, of course, Arthur Smith decided, you know what? We won't do that. We're just going to run cover 3 for 51% of snaps, go against our whole game plan, the only game plan that probably works against Amon-Ra St. Brown at home, and we're just going to let him go off and run a completely different coverage. So that's what they did. They ran cover 3. Amon-Ra St. Brown went off. Sam Laporta went off. Jahmyr Gibbs didn't even have to catch any passes because why would he when the wide receivers are always open?
And there's a lot
So
of concerning things with Gibbs that we'll talk about too.
indeed we will. But it's just Arthur Smith seems to keep finding ways to make the wrong decision. And I would say they're tanking for Caleb Williams, but like they're still like very obviously trying to win games. They were 2-0 going into the week.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on over there. As far as the Lions, they ran 11 personnel more often than not, which is not that surprising. Atlanta ran 12 personnel 54% of the time, which is crazy high, but not that surprising considering how much they want to run the ball, and they still want to block and tight end while getting Kyle Pitts up the field. But and the last thing is that game was handled comfortably by the Lions. I think it was 13 or 20-6. It could have been way more. They only scored on 25% of their red zone drives, so they were in the red zone a lot. They didn't usually that number is like in the 50 to 75% range depending on the game. So 25% means they could have blown that game open. Like the Falcons were lucky that it wasn't a blowout.
Yeah. It kind of showed they were missing David Montgomery down there. As
Exactly.
much as I hate to say it, but because I want Jahmyr Gibbs to thrive, but
Yeah.
David Montgomery, he's good at what he does.
He's a grinder. I don't think that's gonna stick. I think they'll be fine in the red zone going forward, especially with the scheme that they run. I think it's very red zone friendly because they never really rely on deep bombs too much. They just kind of happen here and there when they're open.
Yeah.
But obviously you don't want that to continue. So they play Thursday night against Green Bay, something to keep an eye on. But with what looks to be a stud rookie tight end, Amon-Ra St. Brown in there, reliable hands, and Josh Reynolds, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be fine. It might not be next week. It might not be the week after. But assuming the Lions keep their shit together enough to make the playoffs, because it looks like they have their hand on the division so far, I think it'll be figured out by then just fine. I'm not too concerned.
Yeah, from what I've seen, 17 routes, considering they threw the ball 33 times. So that means they probably had about 38, 40 dropbacks that game. It was nothing that anyone expected him to do, considering he had 21 the game before. And when he barely played, I think it was with 25% snap share, he had 9 routes run. Do you know how many routes or how many snaps he played?
Yesterday or in the first 2 weeks?
Yesterday.
I can check right now, but I imagine it was high. Like outside of I think one drive where Zonovan Knight
It'd
was
be
used a
above
bit.
50% for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm checking right now. Let me go to game log. That'll make it easier. Where is it? Why can't I see snaps? All right, we're just gonna have to edit this part out.
I figure we're doing that anyways.
Offensive snaps. Here we go. Week 1, 19. Week 2. Okay. Since we're cutting that out, let me make it clear. Here are the snaps that Jahmyr Gibbs played each week. Week 1 against the Chiefs, only 19, and he had 9 touches. Week 2 against Seattle, 31 snaps, 14 touches. Week 3 against the Falcons, 38 snaps, 18 touches. So the touch ratio is staying about pretty similar. They just seem to want him to use him a lot more in the running game than the passing game.
Yeah. And then when you have an explosive player like Jahmyr Gibbs, you want to get him on like a lot of zone type concepts, get him out in space. But no, they decide to run him right up the middle almost every time, which didn't make any sense to me. It's not him as a player I'm worried about. It's how they're using him.
Yeah.
And it makes sense how they used DeAndre Swift and they got rid of him, and now he's thriving behind an actual offensive line and decent scheme for him.
I mean, to be fair, Jahmyr Gibbs played pretty well.
You
82
think so?
or yeah, 80 yards on 17 rushes, 4.7 yards per carry. I mean, I can check how much of that was before contact, but yards before contact per rush, 1.53. So we're talking 3-ish yards after contact per rush. That's solid, bro.
But I feel like David Montgomery could have did that too.
Oh, 100%. I'm not saying he's ran
Yeah,
better than Montgomery, but it's easy, I think, when we're talking about player props and fantasy football and usage to say, oh, we wanted Jahmyr Gibbs passing the ball more, and they're
yeah.
not using him how we expected. And they should have used him more in the receiving game. That's not what I'm saying. But like I'm watching
I
the game, and I was kind of thinking the same thing as you. I was like, man, they're not using Jahmyr Gibbs right. Like we're wasting him. And then you
yeah.
see him
I was
break
thinking
off.
it from like trying to win games perspective.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like you don't see those big plays that you expect to see with Jahmyr Gibbs, and then you see a couple like 6, 7, 8 yard rushes, and then next thing you know, you realize, oh, he's at 80 rushing yards, and you're like, okay, like maybe they know what they're doing. I don't know. I don't think that they will last doing that. I think versus the Falcons, they kind of got away with it. And if they do it versus the Packers, I think they'll get away with it again. But I'd like to see him in space more because I think that's what they drafted him for. If they wanted
Yeah.
to just get a guy in between the tackles, I don't think they would have picked him at 12, nor would they have been as excited as we saw them when they picked him. So we'll see what they do. I think if I had to guess, I think since they were only
2.12
really,
yards before contact last week.
where do you see that? I see
On
1.50.
fantasy points.
Oh, on True Media it has 1.53. So I don't know.
Okay.
Either way, all I'm trying to say is, I think they obviously ran him pretty much exclusively for routes week 1 and 2. With Montgomery out, I think they decided to use him a bit more as a pure rusher, just like almost get him that exposure. And then I think we're going to see a bit more balance each way from here on out. So we're playing a guessing game with him right now.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's Lions and Falcons. Let's move on to the next game. We got the Cleveland Browns versus Tennessee Titans. I don't think anybody wanted to watch this game, and if you had the option between watching the other games and this one, I wouldn't be surprised if you watched the other games.
Yeah.
Before we get started on this segment, let's show you guys probably my favorite video of the week, if I can find it. All right, here we are. You guys ready? All right, we'll crop that out. So we'll just clip to this part. Share screen. All right. Deshaun Watson, $230 million guaranteed. Let's see what you get here. Dude, that's horrible. Like, do you remember last year when I think it was one primetime game where Marcus Mariota basically was falling and just like blindly chucked it 20 yards to Kyle Pitts? That's
Yep,
what that
that's
reminds
exactly
me
what
of.
that was.
Except the only difference is this one was backwards and it
Yeah.
didn't play.
Oh man.
We've been talking about it the first 2 weeks, and we'll talk about it again. Deshaun Watson, if you're expecting him to finally make a comeback and be a real quarterback for the Browns and make the trade worth it. Stop. I think we've all established that that's not happening. If the rust was the reason for it, it would have broken off by now. The Browns receiving options are fine. I'm lagging a little bit. Okay, I'm back.
Yes,
The
you are.
Browns receiving options are fine. Amari Cooper is a solid receiver. Elijah Moore is a decent weapon, who, by the way, the Browns are using wrong, but we'll get to that in a minute. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a great number 2 or 3 option. Njoku is a fine tight end. Their offensive line is great. There's no reason for him to be struggling as much as he is, other than the fact that he's just not the same Deshaun Watson he was before. As far as the Titans,
Definitely.
they're running into the same issue with Derrick Henry. Now, he's getting old. We knew that was going to come eventually.
We just
But
didn't know when he was really going to fall off a cliff because we've been saying it for the last 2 years.
exactly,
All right, this might be the year.
exactly,
And
man.
it didn't happen, but I think it finally is. The
And
wheels are starting to finally fall off.
and exactly. And Tajay Spears, they outsnapped him 33-11 last week. It was looking close to 50-50 coming into week 2, week 1 and 2, coming into week 3. And now he took over a lot more in week 3.
Yeah, this is
We don't
two
know
out
if
of
that'll
three games
stick.
he's outsnapped him.
Yeah. So we don't know if that'll stick, but we've never seen this before for Derrick Henry. So
But we
we're
also have
counting
to
down
think
the days.
about now, like, how often is Tennessee going to be down in these games? Because they like Tajay Spears to come in for the receiving role and those passing downs and obvious pass plays. They got Cincy next. They'll face Indy after that, with I'm assuming going to be a healthy Anthony Richardson. So that offense may be booming. Then they have Baltimore. Like it's gonna be interesting the next couple of weeks for them.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate too, because with the Jaguars surprisingly struggling as much as they are, the Titans actually have a chance to steal the division if they can get that sorted out. Like, this is what
Yeah.
they got DeAndre Hopkins for, was so they wouldn't have to lean on Derrick Henry as much. But you can't just have him like just not used and doing nothing. Like, you still need him to be Derrick Henry if you want a chance at making a run. So uh, again, I feel like we say this a lot about Derrick Henry through like a few bad weeks. We're like, oh, this is it, or whatever, or he'll get injured,
Yep.
and then eventually he bounces back and goes for 30 touches for 170 yards against the Texans. So we'll see. I'm not panicking.
Unfortunately, he won't have that Houston's bounce back until week
Yeah.
15. So,
Jeez.
oh,
Yeah. I mean, I'm not panicking too much, but it's something that I will gladly keep an eye on, because I don't want to be caught holding the bag when I'm like, oh, he's playing an awful run defense. Let's nuke him at 60 yards. He's never been that low in his career. And then you go back and check, and it's like, oh, he's gotten 30 snaps over the course of the last 3 weeks. So it's like, it's something worth keeping track of, but it's not worth screaming at the top of the hilltops that Derrick Henry's washed yet.
if you're looking from a betting perspective, if you see that you think they're gonna be down big, probably bet against Derrick Henry.
Yep. That's I like that. And then on the Brown side, the other thing that I wanted to talk about, that I said I'd get to, is Elijah Moore. For whatever reason, he's a great route runner, solid out of the slot, solid out wide. Stefanski feels the need to use him as this gadget wide receiver out of the backfield. It's not really working. I think I saw something. Him and Amari Cooper had the same amount of targets last week, or
Yeah,
maybe it was week 2
they
last
just had a
week.
super low A dot.
Yeah, they both had like 9 targets. Elijah Moore had 10 air yards. Amari Cooper had 150.
Nope.
So you know how crazy it is to have 9 targets for a total of 10 air yards as a wide receiver. They're not using him as a true wide receiver, but that's
That's those are running back numbers. If you guys don't
yeah,
know,
that's my point though. Like, use him at, like, you can put him in snaps in the backfield. That's fine, but he is a solid wide receiver. He can run routes. He can make catches.
and
Let
when
him
he
do
does
stuff.
run routes on the outside, he gets an inaccurate pass. So,
Exactly. It's he. just can't
Maybe
win.
that's why they're doing that. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, they're desperate to get him involved, but it's like we have no other option. We have to put him back there, else he's not getting the ball.
Yeah.
It's this Deshaun Watson experiment is super unfortunate, man. All right, next game, Saints and Packers. Derek Carr goes down early in the second quarter,
Sprained
or not, or
AC
late in the
joint.
second quarter. Jameis Winston comes in, and usually you get excited when Jameis
Oh no,
Winston
it's
comes into a
third
game.
quarter.
Oh, he got injured at the end of the second quarter, but then I think it went
Oh, okay.
into halftime right after that. I think they punted.
Yeah.
But regardless, usually you get excited when Jameis Winston comes into a game, knowing who Jameis Winston is. It felt like they never really let him be Jameis Winston. They were just like, they treated him like a normal backup where it's like, hey, don't screw up, get your guys the ball, let them go to work. And I think they lost because of that.
Well, I think in my opinion, they try to lean on him too much
You
with
think
the
so?
lead. There were between the time Derek Carr got hurt in the third quarter and when they lost the lead, they threw 10 times versus 5 runs. Instead of trying to
Yeah, but
kill
I'm
clock,
talking more like the plays that they were asking him to run, less so about whether they were leaning on the pass or the run. Like, let me check.
but it
I
doesn't
want to
matter
see.
what play they're running if they're trying to lean on his arm though, even though they're trying
Well,
to
yeah, but you think
run the
Jameis
clock
Winston,
out.
you're thinking, oh, we got Olave and Shaheed running 30 yards downfield, and you're thinking he's gonna bomb it down there, but he wasn't really doing that.
I wouldn't want him to.
You gotta let Jameis cook. But I
I
mean,
mean, the thing is, he didn't need to cook. You literally could have put any quarterback
yeah,
back there.
yeah, that I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
If I had to guess, probably had something to do with it being Kendrick Miller's first game and them not wanting to use Tony Jones a lot.
except they
Because
did because he had more snaps and more
yeah,
rushing.
but he only had 8 rush attempts. I mean, like I'm not using Tony. If I'm the coach, I'm not saying, hey, we're gonna rely on Tony Jones back there.
I don't know. I
I
think I'd
just
rather do that, even though as much as I don't like Tony Jones, he's gonna be irrelevant next week.
oh yeah, Kamara's coming back. That'll be fun. I'm excited. Who do the
Yeah.
Saints play next week?
Let's check.
Yeah, I can pull it up real quick.
Tampa.
Tampa. That'll be fun. So I'm excited to watch that one. But back to this game. Um, I just I felt like so I'll agree they did rely on the pass too much while having the lead. It gets tough because it's like I want to say that they should have run the ball more, and then when they pass, they take a couple deeper shots. But then at the same time, I don't know how much we could have expected them, how much more we could have expected them to run the ball. I know Taysom Hill, 4 rushes for 12 yards. I mean, you'd like to think he breaks one off just being Taysom Hill, but that's on 4 rushes. You can't
Yeah.
exactly hold that against him.
So there was
She,
4 drives out of those out of that time without Derek Carr in when they had the lead. 2 of them went 3 and out,
yeah,
and they were majority pass.
I mean, they
Passing on
deserve to
first
lose that game.
down. Actually ran but for 1 yard on the other one, but
We predicted some Jordan Love regression, and boy, did that come. 22 of 44, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. For somebody who had an 11% touchdown percentage coming into this game, that got hit like a truck. I don't expect that to stop. As well as we talked about Jordan Love looking good through preseason and the first 2 weeks, the Packers offense as a whole is not good enough to be as efficient as they were the first 2 weeks.
yeah.
So they're going to get the flip side of that. It happened a little bit last week. They somehow still won the game. I think week 3, Detroit's going to be their hardest defensive matchup so far. Don't be surprised if it happens again. That Saints defense is good. Usually you force a team to 18 points, you win that game. But Saints couldn't do it. Packers are 2-1. Detroit's 2-1. They play each other on Thursday Night Football. I'm not gonna make a prediction because I'm a biased Lions fan, but it could be huge for both teams. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Saints, got to keep it on Derek Carr. Obviously, you want him there over Jameis Winston. But even if Jameis Winston's there, Kamara coming back and being 2-1 is a huge addition. And going into a divisional game where it's pretty much a toss-up, I think, between them and the Bucs. I don't know that one of them's a clear favorite. So we'll see what happens. Shaheed, even though he didn't have, I think he had like 1 receiving yard, his snap share went up a bunch, which is super encouraging because he's a dog. Michael Thomas, he's not 2019 Michael Thomas, but he's getting his work. Chris Olave looks good. He hasn't been able to break the top off of the team yet, like we would have expected him to by this stage.
But
But
he's still amazing.
yeah, no, he like if you're watching him, you're like, all right, like this Chris Olave is nice. So 18-17, not everybody's favorite game, but ended up being super exciting towards the end. Next game, the destroyer of what felt like a lot of parlays, Texans and Jaguars. We can just say the Jaguars are very much not living up to expectations, and the Texans are surpassing expectations a lot. CJ Stroud looks really good. Tank Dell, by the way, his first read share has gone up from 15% in week 1 to I think it was 32% in week 3. Nico Collins was dominating week 1 and 2. Didn't have to do much this week because special teams went off, defense went off, and Tank Dell went off. But Nico Collins is still nice, so don't anybody get that twisted. On the Jaguars side, it felt like nobody showed up to play except ETN.
Yeah.
I'll go back and look at the exact stats, but it was like you're watching the game and you're like, all right, is anybody else going to do anything?
If you guys want to know something interesting, when Houston is at Jacksonville, they have not lost a game there since 2017.
My goodness.
That was my reason for thinking Houston would win that game, or at least cover the spread.
Trevor Lawrence, 27-40 for 279 yards, 7 yards per attempt. I'm not going to lie, it did not feel like that watching that game. It felt like if Travis Etienne wasn't breaking off 8+ yard runs, the drive was dead every time. By the way, Calvin Ridley, 7 targets on 3 receptions, 2 of them easy drops in the first half. Like you'd never expect Ridley to drop those. We can only say it's like you have to assume it's rust, but after just like not playing for basically 2 years, but not what you want to see. Hopefully he cleans that up because Zay Jones is out. You can't be relying on Evan Ingram to be your biggest reception leader in the game, especially not in a divisional matchup. And even like special teams, dude. I don't know how many of you guys saw that return touchdown, but the guy who returned it wasn't even the one that was supposed to catch the return. So it's like
it looked like a tight end, if I remember correctly.
Dude, they just lost across the board. Like they didn't win a single position. It was truly embarrassing to watch. Like you'd expect that out of a game like that Dolphins Broncos matchup we'll talk about. Actually, it's next on the list. You were expecting the Dolphins to be better than the Broncos. If the Jaguars dominated the Texans across every level, you would not have been surprised. So for that to completely flip, it's not good, especially after the Jags only scored 9 points the week before against the Chiefs. So I talked about the Ravens game being kind of like a one-off upset I'm not too worried about. This one I'm very worried about for the Jaguars.
Yeah.
I think they're in a tough spot. Even that week 1 game against the Colts, everybody expected them to handle comfortably. They were in control of the game, but they never ran away with the game. Against a week 1 rookie quarterback where your team is much better and your wide receiver 1 goes off for 80 yards in the first half, you'd expect to run away with that game, and they didn't. Then they got dominated in week 2, and they got dominated even more in week 3 against a much lesser opponent. If you're a Jaguars
Yeah.
fan, you need to see something change quick. Let's just hope it's Calvin Ridley getting used to a new team and some injuries. That's all I can really say about it.
Yeah, there are some bad drops on the receivers for Jacksonville. I think eventually that should lead to some positive regression for Trevor Lawrence, but obviously,
You have
I
to hope
don't
so.
think drops are sticky stat anyways.
No, they definitely aren't.
We'll we'll see, unless it's Deontay Johnson apparently. So he just keeps doing
Yeah,
it year
that's
after year.
dude. Mike Evans dropped like 4 passes in prime time. We'll get to that later as well. But I was like, dude, people get on Johnson for 2 drops in primetime games. Mike Evans was dropping like gimmies, bro. I was getting
Yeah, but he made up for that
pissed.
hell of a
Yeah,
catch.
he made up for it, but it was like, man, like get your shit together. Um, but yeah, now Jaguars are 1-2, Texans are 1-2. I think Titans are also 1-2. Are they? I forget.
Titans are 1-2. Yeah.
Is that whole division 1-2? No, the Colts are 2-1. All right,
Oh yeah, because
Indianapolis.
they won last week. They should have lost,
Just,
but yeah, but they got
just
the
like we
lead.
expected. By week 3, the Colts to be leading the division. Oh God. All right. Good luck, Jacksonville. Broncos and Dolphins. Now, this is probably going to be a short segment because what is there to talk about when a team wins 70-20? Every running back went off. Every wide receiver went off. The backup quarterback had more fantasy points than half of the starters in week 3. Dolphins, even when they weren't trying to score, they were scoring. Like, I saw a tweet. It was like, "Oh, owners are mad at Mike McDaniels for running up the score," and it was like, it's not running up the score when you're just running the ball and they're breaking off 40-yard runs. Like, what do you want them to do? Take a knee with 8 minutes left? Like, they're just
Man, these are grown ass men.
yeah,
You
bro.
can't take getting scored on. This world, man.
Utter dominance. Like, there's not even like, oh, they did this scheme and it worked really well, blah blah blah. Like, no, it was just like every aspect of the game.
When
Linemen.
when you miss 25 tackles, you deserve to lose. It's
Oh,
that
exactly.
simple.
It was crazy to witness because it was like you felt like every time you switched the channel and switched back 30 seconds later, it was like, oh, another touchdown. It was like, dude, what is going on? As far
It's
as the
ridiculous.
Broncos, you traded huge package for Russell Wilson. Obviously doesn't work out. Fire your coach. Then you trade another, what was it, first and second rounder for a retired Sean Payton. Now you
Stop
see this
hiring
happen.
retired coaches. I'm over it.
JJ's very passionate about this topic.
It's annoying. No, none of them recently have done good. It just doesn't make sense.
Is there any besides Sean Payton and what's his
I
face?
seen a list the other day too.
Oh
It
God.
was
All right, fair enough then. It's it's tough though because like I can't fault the Broncos because really they just tried to do what the Rams did with trading a big package for Stafford and then like selling out their future to win now, and it just didn't
yeah.
work out as well. Because like I think the perception of Russell Wilson at the time of his trade was better than Matthew Stafford at the time of his trade. At least it was similar. So I don't think you can fault them that much there, unless you have revisionist history. And then Sean Payton, even though he was retired, like Jay just saying, he was a fairly respected coach. So it's
Yeah.
like you can't get too mad at them, but like it's like now you're in this position. Not only are you bad, but you just had one of the most historic losses of all time. And you're like, all right, like eventually you
And
just
you're
gotta
lucky the
call it
Dolphins
quits.
didn't break the record too. They should
They
have.
could have, yeah. They decided not to pretty much. So it's like you gotta cut your loss at some point. I feel like that's really all there is to talk about. Unless you want to talk
Yeah.
about specific players, but like,
There's
is there anything
nothing.
else to
There's
really say
nothing else to
except
talk about.
Tyreek Hill good, Tua good, Miami offensive line and running backs good, Broncos wide receivers extremely mid. Marvin Mims again, just like
Mims is not getting enough snaps. I don't get it.
I
He's been their most explosive player by far the first 3 weeks, but he's only played 27 snaps through the first 3 weeks. It doesn't make sense.
he coming into the season, there was always a window for him to end up as a wide receiver one for that offense.
Yeah.
You would have expected Sean Payton to figure that out by now with what we've seen so far.
A
So
receiver playing 27 snaps leads the team in yards right now.
and back to back,
Make
he
it
ran
make
like
sense.
what 6 routes the game before, and he led the team in yards again.
Yep.
If I'm Marvin Mims and I get 20 routes for 50 yards the next game, I'm requesting a trade. I don't care if I'm a week 4 rookie. It's
The
just
Broncos are poverty at this point. There's nothing else to say.
anybody. Patrick Surtain, absolute dog. Don't put him in that Jair Alexander, Sauce Gardner tier. We're not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
To be fair, his dad is on the Miami staff. So maybe his dad was like, "Oh, I know everything about this young buck. Do this, this, and this." But it's
Hit him with
it
the
was
reverse
just,
Uno card.
but dude, that was just you. It's hard to defend a lot of players on that offense or defense for the Broncos after a game like that.
And the Broncos players are tired of it. They're tired of losing.
Yeah, it's literally like right now it feels like the Broncos and the Jets are the same team. The only difference is the Jets lost their starting quarterback. The Broncos just have a bad starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Game of the week, it felt like Chargers and
Yes. Very
Vikings.
exciting.
Mike Williams, hope you feel better. Torn ACL. I don't think anybody was happy to see that except that one fantasy football counselor goon. I don't know how many of you guys saw that video. But he's basically victory lapping Mike Williams' injuries because he told you guys not to draft him.
That's
But
crazy. Can't
yeah,
predict no injuries. I don't care
it's
how injury prone.
horrible.
Everybody said that with
People are
Christian
horrible.
McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor last season for fantasy. And look what happened. Jonathan Taylor never hurt, but he ended up being hurt damn near the entire season.
It's just it's horrible that people actually do that shit. But Mike Williams will talk about how the Chargers will adjust in future episodes. As far as this past game, I mean it was exactly what you expected it to be. It felt like absolute shootout that ends in a Kirk Cousins interception to lose the game.
Yeah.
But I mean to be fair, that wasn't Kirk Cousins' fault. Hit pass, hit somebody's helmet, and then popped up into defender's hands. I just think it's funny as a
Yeah.
Lions fan to make fun of Kirk Cousins' interceptions. But good to see the Chargers to get in the win column, man. It's
And they
about
were
damn
great
time.
against the blitz.
Yeah, bro. Justin Herbert, 82% pass completion on what, 31 blitzes, 32 blitzes?
Yeah.
Other thing, Brian Flores needs to stop blitzing. It is not working.
Nope.
We're 3 weeks in now, and like it's
They
very
do not
evident.
have the personnel for it right now. I think
Not at
next
all.
year they have a chance. I'm sure he'll be blitzing a lot next year, but he needs to get the personnel in the offseason to be able to really make it work.
100%. And it's
For now, you got to adjust.
it doesn't sound like he's going to.
No, he's not.
After he never adjusted to the Eagles in week 2 and then came back and I'm lagging again. I'm back. All right. After he never adjusted to the Eagles in week 2 and then never adjusted to blitzing Justin Herbert in week 3, it's like, how many weeks is it going to take him to learn? What's
Yeah.
important is Vikings pretty much just took them out of title contention if anybody still thought they had a chance, because I think it's like the last 20 years the Super Bowl champions started at least 4-2 or better. The Vikings are now 0-3, so you guys can do that math. But they were never Alexander Madison as their back behind a fairly inefficient offensive line for a run scheme that was never going to lead to anything. And then a defense that gives up yards like their Oprah. It was never going to happen. On the Chargers side, very encouraging to see Justin Herbert continue to play well, because that's about all you can depend on. Hopefully Austin Eckler's back at some point. I think it's still 50-50. He comes back next week. But as long as Justin Herbert can hold the fort until Austin Eckler comes back, they have a chance. The issue
What's even
is
more impressive is Keenan Allen at age 31 getting 215 yards.
he's a dog, bro. People look at you like you're crazy when you say he's like a top 10 wide receiver,
Yeah.
but it's like I think it was Ocho Cinco was like I think Keenan Allen's top 3. And everybody was like, "Oh, Ocho Cinco doesn't know ball." It's like, dude, if anybody knows ball, it is Ocho Cinco.
And he ran some nice routes last week. I might even put a compilation together.
I love it. But Mike Williams is a tough blow. It's kind of what they drafted Quentin Johnson for. He's not the same receiver by any means, but just having another weapon to go to when Mike Williams is out. Josh Palmer, one of the best plug and play wide receiver fours any team can ask for. He's not like a stud, but there's a reason he's a wide receiver four. But whenever he's asked to step up, he always does. So
Yeah.
I think the Chargers will be fine in the passing game without Mike Williams. It's just a matter of holding the fort down until Eckler gets back because you're going to need to make a midseason run if you want to put yourself back in contention because right now they're not. The defense is way too bad considering that how much did they give up week 1 points? I think it was 37 to the Dolphins, 27 to the Titans. I think it was high 20s. They lost in overtime. And then you give up 24 to the Vikings. You gotta tighten up that defense a little bit. You gotta get at least one game where you shoot them down below 20 because honestly, that Vikings team, they should have gotten a touchdown on that last drive and got to 31 points. Chargers very easily could have lost that game and probably should have. That defense is too bad. You can't depend on them. It's literally just Justin Herbert has to carry that defense. All right. Patriots, Jets. Jets do not look good, man. Not only do they not look good on the field, they're fighting on the sidelines. Players are fighting with their coaches. Third string player, not even like Garrett Wilson like type player, like third string running backs. Michael Carter is fighting with I think it was his offensive coordinator. I don't know which coach it was.
It was the running backs coach.
Running backs coach. So it's like, and honestly, he has a reason to. When you're losing, like you literally can't get anything going on offense, and your coach is refusing to try anything different. It's like, what's saying insanity is making the same mistake over and over again?
Yep.
It's baffling, dude. And like,
I'm not even find another quarterback.
Oh, 100%. It's like Robert Saleh just took over and is like trying to back his quarterback. You know, it's okay to just finally accept the fact that Zach Wilson going into year 3, 4 now. It's okay to say like, okay, like we've seen enough because I think everybody has seen it.
He tried to say like, oh, he's doing good when he's in rhythm, but he's never in rhythm. He's maybe in rhythm on 3% of the game. Each game, like it doesn't make any sense.
It's okay to finally call it quits on a player. You don't have to lift them up throughout their career. Literally, like think about if they went and made a trade for Gardner Minshew right now. They're at least a top half team.
Gardner Minshew, Jameis Winston. Shit, I wish they had Mike White back.
I'm trying to look at their first or their 3-and-out rate. I forget where I was looking at it. Drive rates.
Computer Power Boy.
61.5% 3-and-out rate. So basically, when they're taking the field, you're expecting them to go 3-and-out. And what's crazy is, didn't surprise me at all. I was expecting that number to be higher. That's how bad that offense looks right now. So it's a miracle that they were in position to win that game, which brings me to my next point. Patriots, we got to be better than that. I know it's a divisional game. I'm pretty sure they were away. Could be wrong there. But you cannot have your opponent look that bad and be in a position to win the game late.
Yeah,
people thought Mac Jones would have a chance against this secondary. He didn't. I think that was a bad expectation to begin with. But Zeke had a good game, by the way.
Yeah, 16 carries and 80 yards with only a long of 14 yards. So he was getting chunk yardage.
But 15 and 29 for Mac is not good enough. 6.9
Yeah.
yards per attempt. Going 1 for 4 on your targets to Ramondre Stevenson, which should normally be easy targets. It is not good enough. Having your lead target be 2 for 2 to your tight end Pharaoh Brown, and the only reason he's up that high in the box score is because of a broken coverage by the Jets, which was, by the way, your only touchdown of the game. You got to be better than that. And you can say, oh, it's a new offensive coordinator. They're still getting their legs out from underneath them. But they look better versus the Eagles. They look better versus the Dolphins. I think after that Dolphins game, people were expecting, like, oh, they look surprisingly solid. Like, once they play a bad team, they might have a chance. While that Jets defense is good, when they're playing constant snaps because their offense keeps going 3 and out, you have to exploit that at some point. They're definitely gassed. Like, there's no matter how good a defense is, they're not going to be able to have the stamina to withstand that. So the fact that you were never able to take advantage of it is not good, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Bills Commanders. Weather was not ideal in this game, but the Bills looked solid. Sam Howell finally had that struggle you were expecting him to have against a good defense. This was kind of the game where we were like, all right, either Sam Howell is really going to impress a lot of people and put himself on the map, or he's going to get those growing pains that we expect. And I feel like he got those growing pains we expected. I'll pull up the box score for that game as well, so we can get a bit of a better picture. But um, the Bills had their foot on their necks pretty much the whole game.
Yeah, for Washington, you could see Cole Turner was their leading target guy, which you don't really expect. Then it was Terry, and then Jahan Dotson he's not been getting the ball.
It's
Four
crazy too
targets.
because it's like what's the Matt Harmon did like a review on him, like just going over
Yeah,
every single route. And it's like Jahan Dotson's still getting open. Like he's open
yeah.
on a lot of plays. For whatever reason, him and Howell just aren't on the same page, and Howell's not finding him. So
It may take him until the second half of the season. I know it's like, from what I'm understanding, it's a hard offense to learn and all the
yeah,
cadences for Sam Howell, especially him being his first year starting. Um, I mean, it's a new offense for everybody. Um, it's gonna take him a minute to get used to it. He's done better than I expected coming into the season. I'll give him that. Even with the conditions, it was tough. I mean, going against Buffalo, it was always going to be tough.
yeah, and Buffalo's used to that tough weather too. I think that's
Yeah,
another thing to consider. That's a team full of veterans that has played in that bad weather together so many times before. So you can only hold that against, like, it's like, yes, both teams played in the bad weather, but Sam Howell's never done it. That team isn't used to it as a whole. It's a completely new offense going against a team that's had the same system, same players, and is used to that weather. So it's not exactly the same excuse. I want to see when they play Philadelphia because they're a sneaky 2-1 right now. If they get Philadelphia like week 9 or something where they've had enough time to mesh,
they play Philly next week.
oh, never mind. I was gonna say if they can steal one Philly game and like stay at like a decent win percentage, they could steal the division with how bad the Cowboys looked. But because I think if they can end up going to week 10, like 6-4, 7-3, I think they can make a legit run if that Bieniemy offensive scheme finally kicks in. Because Bieniemy is an offensive genius. Somehow, from what I can tell, he's not like a world breaker, but he looks legit. And they have great
Yeah,
weapons for him to pass to. So there's a very real world where that Commanders team ends up being a problem later. To be clear, I don't think they're going to beat out the Cowboys and Eagles. I just think it's a more realistic scenario than people realize.
yeah.
All right, next game.
I do have
Panthers
to go
and
though.
uh we'll get to the rest of the games tomorrow probably.
Okay.
We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. In that case, what I'll do is I'll have the guy cut up these individual games, and then I'll just mesh it with. I'll post the full video after we get all the individual games done.
Okay.
And mesh it together for the big video. All right. Have fun, dog.
All right. Did you want to do your outro or there's no outro? I don't know what's happening.
No, we'll do the outro at the end of all the games because, like I said, right now he's cropping out the individual games separately.
Yeah.
And then I'll wait until we finish the whole thing to bring it all together, and then I'll do the outro at the end of the Rams-Bengals game.
Gotcha.
You wanted to do it. What time is your class done today?
I won't be home until like in the evening.
Shit, never mind. We'll do it tomorrow morning.
Yep.
All right, take care, bro.
All right. Take it.